In the summer of 2022, a consortium led by Altitude Angel began Project Skyway, an ambitious plan to build 165 miles of drone superhighway through the heart of England. Now, 2.5 years later, the project is concluding. Altitude Angel CEO Richard Parker is today joined by Head of Delivery Craig Wilson to talk about the challenges, outcomes, and future of Project Skyway and the Arrow platform which powers it.
So the original goals for Skyway were to create a scalable mechanism through which automated beyond line of sight could become a routine operation. Secondarily, we wanted to make sure that you could be free to choose whatever type of drone that you needed for your mission, whether it was a fixed wing aircraft or a VTOL or some sort of quad or hex-based rotorcraft. And then thirdly, that you could do that in unsegregated airspace. And I think a lot of people thought that those things certainly were going to be very hard to do in combination. I'm very proud of the work that we've been able to do as a consortium to say, well, we've proven that we can do all of these things. We've got the sensing technology necessary to credibly look up out into the sky over a wide area and spot both crewed and uncrewed, conspicuous and non-conspicuous aircraft. And in simple terms, what does that mean? It means every existing airspace user, drone or GA, can just carry on and do what they are already doing without needing to change on their operations, without needing to carry new equipment. And the only reason that works is because Skyway itself will move drones that are flying on the Skyway out of the way of everybody else. And that is a rare focus for us, right? If you remember in those early days, how do we build a system which is capable of doing that? And we had that as a goal specifically so that we didn't have to keep pushing drones into versions of a restricted airspace. So now it's actually not just feasible, but a rare possibility for multiple operators to get flying over a major town or city without shutting the airspace to other people.
Yes, you're allowing the drones to get to where the use cases and the people are.
Exactly. That creates a commercial viable outcome for everyone involved.
So if we look back to sort of March 22, when we were coming up with the idea of Skyway and we had the whole concept, just want to talk us through really how that came about and how we've got to the point we are today.
Yeah, so this all came about, off the back of Future Flight Phase 2. We did a program called Accelerate, largely supported by BT, and we were really trying to focus on some of the initial learnings. What might we have to do in order to create a scalable solution at some point in the future? And I think we had our first tower test site down at Green Park in Reading, and we learned 1,000 ways to not build an effective surveillance tower. And we also had to understand the complexities of various different communications mechanisms. And so I would say Skyway came off the back of a lot of experimentation with physical infrastructure and communications infrastructure that then meant that when we went into Skyway, we could be really focused on building a commercially scalable solution, something that could viably and relatively easily be deployed over huge amounts of the country in a short space of time.
Yeah, I think the big thing that comes out of that for me for Skyway was it was incredibly ambitious. We didn't shy away from the challenge there. I mean, we took what was a proof of concept, really, I guess, out of the work that we did in Accelerate. And then we really sort of took the bull by the horns and went for the middle of England, 165 miles, unsegregated airspace, and sort of committed to sort of demonstrating that could be done and then getting to a point where that could then offer a commercial solution kind of going forward.
Yeah. And we weren't shy with the route selection either, right? Like we crossed, or I think we still do, tons of different motorways, A roads, B roads. We go straight over residential areas. We go through commercial areas. We cross railways. Pretty much all types of infrastructure that we could cross, we cross. And when folks look at the Skyway route, they'll see that quite often the sort of coverage area of the towers also clip into parts of controlled airspace. And that was a very deliberate nod to the fact that whilst Skyway itself wasn't dealing with operating in controlled airspace, it is very likely that swapping between controlled and uncontrolled airspace is going to become a core part of our future combined, and that we would need to provide an easy mechanism for, an AAM aircraft in Reading to be able to end up at Heathrow, for instance. So all of those things were factored into the route design. And you're right, it was about having that strong ambition, but also building on those foundations and having that credibility to deliver a functional service, which is now where we're at.
Yeah, I think the final point on that for me that comes up is that also the number of commercial opportunities that we've seen along the route. We've got large industrial areas like Bicester by Didcot on the way up, where, as you've already said, we're just right past. So it does enable all of the industries in those type of areas to sort of take full advantage of the corridor as well. So the challenges with building a 165-mile corridor are numerous. I think the first thing that comes to mind is just the actual geography itself. Although relatively flat in the central part of England where we're operating at the moment, a small change in elevation or large towers or other infrastructure can have a huge effect on what we're trying to do. So siting the towers and making sure we get them in the right place so they can see enough of the sky, it was really important.
Yeah, you're absolutely. And I think one of the other challenges we had to overcome was how do we get power and reliable communications to quite often what are just fields, with no infrastructure in them, and overcoming that, making that work, making sure we bring a degree of resilience to that. So we have multiple methods of communication should one fail, making sure that we can power from sunshine and batteries, as well as, if necessary, provide grid input. So you have all of these physical challenges associated with it. And then coupled with the logistical challenges, learning how to build a manufacturing capability within the company, being able to, I think when we first started Skyway, it would take us probably 3 or 4 months to build a tower. Getting that down to sub 1 week, I think is absolutely incredible and testament to the skill set of the teams involved in that. So that's on the physical side. And then of course we have the infrastructural side. On the software side of things, we've had to figure out how do we monitor the health of all the towers, monitor the output of the sensors, and fuse all of that input together. There's been numerous challenges throughout the last couple of years, and we've solved all of those to create this really high resolution surveillance picture, which is the core fabric of Skyway. Really. I think the thing that was probably a big learning experience was just how much of a challenge it would be to approach each operator individually and to have to deal with changes to individual safety cases in order to use the same kind of common Skyway system. And I think, I think everyone was probably hoping for a more sort of standardized approach that could have developed in parallel alongside the operator's ability to use the platform. But we operate within the current regulatory environment, and that is also a key goal for Skyway is not requiring new regulation. But it seems like those two parallel paths stay parallel for much longer than we would have liked, rather than eventually merging. So I think that was probably a significant learning outcome for everyone involved, actually, including the regulator.
So if we talk about our regulatory journey as well, I think that's been a key part of what we've been doing with Skyway. And indeed, I think we were ambitious, we've already said at the start. However, things take an awful lot longer than we kind of expect. And also, I think the other key consideration for us was realizing that in a project of this timescale, we very much had to work within the regulation that already existed. So we had a clear view when we started the project of how we were going to tackle regulation. And that was very much about supporting the operator and their operational safety case and giving them the information they needed to apply. However, going through the project, we've sort of learned a lesson here that wasn't really the right approach. And certainly it didn't future-proof the solution for us and take us in the direction that we wanted, because we needed a solution that we could scale to be commercially viable. So is it worth talking a little bit about that?
Sure. I think, coming in on what you were saying there, Skyway's ambition at its core was to provide, a kind of software-only mechanism to allow any operator to offload the avoidance part of their journey, or the separation part of their journey to the platform. And I think whilst we still have that ambition, whilst the technology has absolutely proven it's capable of doing that, we operate within a regulatory domain right now that effectively forced a slightly different pathway. I think ultimately is still one which is a very significant leap forwards, but it was kind of an adjacent step from our perspective, because I think what we ended up having to implement was effectively a CNS, communications, navigation, and surveillance certificate around the platform, and enabling operators to leverage that CNS certified technology. But what that had the effect of doing was making more work, I think, for an operator on an individual basis than we would have hoped for. Right? I think we were hoping to sort of template the solution and say to an operator, here's the thing that you need to submit to the CAA in order to have all of this navigation taken care of for you. And actually, we've kind of had to take a step earlier than that, which is, here's how the technology functions and here's its capabilities and limitations. You have to go to the CAA and figure out how that fits within your operations. And I think whilst we had this very lofty ambition, and we can absolutely get there, we've had to work within the sort of pragmatic view right now, which is, well, this is still a very significant leap beyond, because it allows us to remove the need for visual observers, but it hasn't quite gone as far as we would have liked. And I think looking all the way back to the start of Skyway, we set out to do a whole bunch of impossible things, and we figured out all of the technical, all of the physical, and all of the logistical challenges. The only remaining challenge to resolve is the regulatory pathway.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as we're well on the path now, going through that sort of regulatory approval and the operators themselves within the consortium. So it's going to be very interesting to be able to get to the end of that point and then demonstrate it. I guess one of the things that the CNS will enable us to do is give that confidence to other operators as they come on board with the system, that it's a certificated system, as long as their ORA paperwork on their side is capable to cover everything else, then being able to reference our capability should allow them to unlock that BVLOS wherever they are.
Yeah, it's a very exciting project outcome. I think it's supportive of the original vision. I don't think it's gone as far as the hugely ambitious goal that we had. But certainly, is the technology capable of supporting that ambitious goal? Yes. What we have to do now is gather some flight hours, unlock that initial commercial problem, which was, again, a key reason that we wanted to focus on Skyway, getting these commercial operators decoupled from the actual physical environment in which they're flying is an important step. And actually being able to provide a mechanism where you could have 2 companies or 3 companies or more operating in the same physical airspace at a time is a hugely advantageous thing. We can have the NHS flying at the same time as we've got surveys going on, for instance. That is a groundbreaking capability. And I think, coming back to what you said, having the CNS behind the platform is not something we'd initially envisaged needing to do, but actually has turned out to be a very powerful and beneficial offering to everyone involved. Now we need to do the next phase, right, which is your original vision. Let's remove the pilots from the loop. Let's make sure that we can do this at scale for more people, and let's template the entry to that platform so that it's easier for operators and easier for the CAA to approve.
It is all in an environment that doesn't actually impact any of the other air users that are already there. So that unsegregated piece being sort of really important, and that other air users, very difficult to spot the drones and see what's going on, but we're not actually impacting anything that they're doing at all, which is, I think, one of the major benefits of the solution.
Yeah.
So now that Skyway is sort of finishing or finished, and we're looking to the future, we've got the hardware deployed, we've got the capability in place. So what's the plan for the next few weeks, months after that?
So for the next few weeks, we'll deploy nationally. No, I think the goal still remains the same. The clear ambition of Skyway was to get everybody flying BVLOS safely and at scale. And today, whilst there is an outcome that supports existing kind of commercial operators being able to modify their safety cases, that's still very much a bespoke and individual process. We still have a lot of work to do with the regulator as a consortium to make that much more templated. And then I think then the next aspect is being able to take that step further and be able to have the system, through having delivered all of the proof, having the system take some of those navigation decisions away from the remote pilot. And in doing that, you can open up one sort of operator to many drone scenarios, and being able to do that over a wider area, I think is key. So really, I would say, in hindsight, I think it's really being able to increase the scale, as well as, I mean that on an operator basis, being able to operate more drones simultaneously, as well as being able to increase the number of operators who can first apply to use the system, but then simultaneously fly around it. Because we know there are no technology limitations in the platform around that. These are procedural and regulatory limitations that we need to collectively solve.
So I guess what we're saying now is that very quickly we're going to be in a position where new operators that are not familiar with Skyway or haven't been involved to date will be able to get on board, get their approval, and then we can look at further deployments, whether that be an extension to Skyway or bespoke, depending on where those use cases are, just to enable their sort of customer support.
Yeah, and we've got that ability within Skyway to build spurs, if you like, so we can take come off that main trunk that we built between Reading and Coventry, and come off to the sides, or we can build individual areas, and that kind of meshing and cell capability really gives us a strong capability to go where the use cases are. And I think that's the final kind of regulatory piece for us, is we've got to move away from a geographic thinking and move more into a capability base where, in other words, wherever there is a Skyway system in place, we can do the flying, as opposed to having to combine the location of the Skyway equipment as part of certification. I think that would be a really valuable service, because then we could do, go very rapidly, support, people who are in need of flood relief and surveillance, where there are disasters, where there are needs to establish communication criteria, communication capability, where you have a need to provide, surveillance from a policing perspective, supporting big events, or other great, other things like marathons, etc., where you want to be able to provide media coverage. Unless those things directly come over or come within the Skyway coverage as it is today, then those are missed opportunities. And I think, again, that's not a technology limitation, that's a procedural and a regulatory one that we need to overcome.